Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. Guys, you can be unstoppable too. Go get that Rocket Fuel book, Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable at mikecroc.com/book or on Amazon, mikecroc.com/book or on Amazon, Rocket Fuel, Become Unstoppable. As we start the show every time, I always like to start with gratitude. I'm so appreciative of you guys being here to listen, for your support. I just want to thank you before I introduce our guest today. And it means the world to me that you come here and watch these on YouTube at Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco or on the podcast and listening to these. However you're pulling this info in, I appreciate it. And thank you very much. Today's guest is a gentleman that's involved with some tech products with the company that I'm involved with as well. That's how we met. His name's Ghafoor. He, in 2005, while on business in the Middle East, he was abducted and accused of being a terrorist, actually the terrorist mastermind behind the London bombings, and then interrogated, tortured, and told he was facing imminent death. After years of struggles with PTSD, depression, and wild oscillations of emotions, he was fortunate to discover the key to unlocking the mind. Alam, I can't wait to get in this with you, man. And, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here.
So before we get into your story, I need to hear this. The question we always start with is, what are you made of? So Alam, what are you made of, man?
What am I made of, man? That's a brilliant question, Mike. So I am the sum total of every experience up to date. That's what I'm made of.
Yeah. So I guess that leads us into asking the questions, right? So, but if you had to sum up with those ingredients into 1 to 5 words, what would you say?
Oh man, that would be attitude, gratitude, determination, tenacity, and love.
Love
There
it.
you go.
All right, good. There you go. All right. So before we get into your story, give me an idea how you grew up. Like, you can take us back as far as when you were crawling to now, anywhere in that line.
Okay, cool, cool.
How did you grow
Look,
up? What was it like?
I grew up with my father was an immigrant from India, Pakistan into the UK. So he had a very um, tough childhood, man. I mean, he was there during the partition of India, Pakistan. He'd seen uh, the terrible murders and crimes that were committed. As a young kid, these were indelibly imprinted on his mind. And he came into the UK when he was like 16 and never got a chance to go back home and see his brothers and sisters and his mom and everybody else. And then my mother came over and married him, and that was it. My father was actually an engineer in the UK, and my mother was just a housewife. But my mother brought me up with such a strong belief, and both mom and dad had a lot of love, so much love, but my mum was so forward thinking. All she ever used to tell me was that I could do anything that I set my mind to, and that you can be anything, you can have anything, you can do anything you want. If you see somebody else having that and doing that, then there's nothing that is going to stop you in this world from doing that, as long as you put the work in, the effort in, you know. And my dad, even though he was an engineer, he got to a certain level in his work, and he didn't progress on any further because he was embarrassed that his grasp of the written English was only basic. He could speak very well, he could speak very eloquently, but he couldn't write and read as effectively as he could speak. But the guy was a freaking genius, man, because from a young age, I grew up seeing my dad look at things and see visions. So he would take me to the property auctions. We'd go look at land and property. And he said, "What do you see?" And I'd see, an empty field or a broken down building. And he'd say, "No, do you know what? We drove up this road. There isn't this here. There isn't this here. There isn't this here. This could be turned into all of those." And then we would, so at a young age, I never did a paper round. I wasn't delivering papers, man. At 14, 15, I was going down to Covent Garden. And for those who know about England and London, Covent Garden was the wholesale market for fruit and veg for the whole of London. So you had traders from all over. You had somebody who just did bananas and apples and carrots and oranges and tomatoes. And so at 4 a.m. in the morning, I would wake up and go over there with my dad and go haggle and barter and negotiate for fruit and veg for his business. And then I'd come home, get ready and go to school. So that was kind of my early formative years. And during that time, I got into martial arts, because one thing that my dad loved was the kung fu movies. He loved all the chop socky, man. And so I grew up watching that, and I said, Dad, I want to train. So he said, yeah, no problem. You go do karate, do kung fu, do judo, do whatever you want. And I saw these Shaolin monks, and these guys could run across the sand and not leave their footprints, and they could jump 50 feet in the air. I mean, it was movies, but to me, I thought, oh, these skills are real. So I wanted to become a Shaolin monk, and I started buying books on how to have the mindset of a Shaolin monk, how to do self-hypnosis, and to take pain away from you and to make your muscles grow. So this was kind of my reading material.
Yeah.
I
Love it.
remember figuring out self-hypnosis at that early age, 14, 15, and going to the dentist and telling the dentist, don't give me the anesthetic, just go ahead and drill in and do the thing.
Yeah, really?
And you sure? And I said, yeah. And so they said, if it gets tough, put your hand up. And so, you know what, the first, and listen, man, I ate a lot of candy when I was a kid. So I was always at the bloody dentist. So when I went there, they were drilling away. You know what? I figured it out, man. I could go into that zone and I could detach and I could ignore the pain, and I was in paradise on a tropical island. Apart from this one bloody time when I couldn't do it. And the drill was, and my hand was flapping around, and they were too busy drilling into me, man. They didn't even notice.
Oh, man.
Oh, man, that was a painful experience. But yeah, so that was kind of the crazy stuff, man, from my childhood.
Wow, man. I couldn't do that. I mean, I'm like, give me the needle. Cause I grew up watching the Three Stooges. So no, but I always like to laugh and carry on. But I love the Kung Fu movies, dude. That was, and you'd see their mouth moving, but it didn't match the words. Yeah. That was great. So what's the first business you got into?
The first business I got into was at the age of 15. At the so we have grammar schools in the UK, and it was a grammar school for boys. So there were 600 plus pupils in there, and it went from year 1 all the way to year 5 or year 6. So you came in at the age of 12 or 13, whatever it was, and you left at 15, 16, whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. So when I got to actually when I got to about 13, so when I was in the second year or third year, what happened was, because of my father having the business, I could get hold of chocolates and drinks and cigarettes, and then I would bring them to school in my bag. And then the boys from the rough side of town who came to that school, they would pick up the girly mags and the Parker pens, and they'd go shoplifting on the morning and then bring all the goods to me. And then I'd pay them off. And then throughout the day, I'd be trading and selling these kids cigarettes and girly mags and chocolates and whatever they wanted at super inflated prices, because they had nowhere else to go.
Right.
So back then, I mean, I used to make 50, 60, 70 pounds, which would be like $100 plus. But we're talking in the 80s, man, when that was a lot. I was probably making more than the damn teachers were on a daily basis. So I saved all this money, man, and I put it away in the bank, and I had about £2,500 saved. And now I didn't know the rules about you have to be 18 to get a bank loan. So I had gone in, spoken to the receptionist, and because I looked older for my age, she had made me an appointment with the bank manager, and I wanted to go back in because I had seen that there was, at one of the property auctions, there was some land up for sale in Orlando, which was swampland. And I asked my dad, I said, why don't you buy this and we can drain it and build on it? Because you know what, this Disney place is growing and I want to be in the US at some point. And he's like, look, son, I haven't got the time or the energy to fly over there and fenced off a lot of swampland. And how the hell are we going to do all this stuff, you know, that we're dreaming of? So I figured, okay, you know what? I'm going to go raise the money myself and buy it at the next auction. So I go into the meeting with
how old are you at this time?
So at this point, I'm about 15, right?
Well, man,
I'm
but how did you know about this swampland? Like, where did you get the idea from?
Because right, listen, on a weekend, I never played football with the rest of the boys. I never went out flipping, messing around and doing stupid, dumb stuff. No, man, I would go off to the property auctions with my dad. And
Okay.
one of them was an international property auction. So I would sit there and see and go through this catalog, and it had stuff all over the world.
Okay, gotcha.
So I started reading up on this, because at the time, you know, my dream was to get over to the US and do business there, right? That's what I always wanted to do. Like, so I get into this meeting with the bank manager. He looks at my bank account, and then he gets to the bit of the age and says, "What's your date of birth?" And I tell him, and he says, "Oh, you're only 15." He says, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "Well, I asked the lady to make me an appointment. I need to borrow another £2,500 so I can buy a plot of land." He says, "Yeah, but you're not old enough." And I said, "Well, how old do you have to be?" He said, "You will be 18. Anyway, then he rang my dad up, and he said, "Listen, your son's coming to the bank. He's asking for a loan. And how the hell's he got £2,500 accumulated here?" And my dad says, "Oh, he runs a little business at school, apparently." so, so he says, "Well, it's a lot of money for a boy 15. And my dad says, "Well, if that's what he's made, that's what he's made, you know?" So I came back home, and my dad said, "Well, what'd you go to the bank for?" I said, "Well, Dad, I wanted a loan to buy the land." And he goes, "Look, even if you had the money and you go to that auction and you buy it, then you haven't got the money to go over there, go check it off and do all the bits." So he said, "Just wait till you get older." And then my mum pulled me to one side. She goes, "Look, son, don't worry. You know what? When you get older, it'll happen for you because you got this dream in your heart." And the funny thing was, Mike, in 2003, I actually came over to the US and I bought my first house in Orlando. And within a year, I bought another two. And within another 6 months of that, I was then working on the development for 6 townhouses, and I bought a big block of land. So you know what? You know, the dreams come true, man. But you've got to have somebody who believes in you.
Yeah.
And God bless my mum, man. She passed away, but
Oh man, I'm
she was
sorry.
my rock, man.
Yeah.
And she put this belief in me to, like, you can stand up with anybody, anywhere in the world, you know, at
Yeah.
any time.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, I talk about my mom instilling me leadership and being an inspiration when I was a young kid. It's phenomenal what they can do for you with, you know, with a really impressionable brain at a young age,
Yeah.
especially, you know. So you got into real estate. Was that your main source of income, your main career?
No. So what happened after that was I never got into the real estate, but my dad was doing some real estate here in the UK on
Yeah.
small basis. And then he injured his back, and he actually ended up with a slip disc where his vertebrae slipped, and it actually cracked. So that put him in a lot of pain. So I saw my dad go, and my dad was remarkably fit, and he was a proper go-getter, right? And I saw him go from that to a guy riddled with pain, constant pain, having to have painkillers all day long. And I saw him deteriorate and become depressed because he felt he couldn't be the man that he used to be anymore. And so then we go on next couple of years. I get into my sort of 17, 18, and then I started working. So I went on to college, but I started working. I started off as a glass collector in a bar, right? And so after a couple of weeks of that, I got promoted to working behind the bar. I got on really well with the manager. Within another couple of months, I was assistant bar manager, and this was at the age of 18. So I was still doing my college, and I was doing that. And then the rate being paid there was something like, £7.50 or something per hour. It was ridiculous. And then I saw this guy come in who would set up the DJ decks,
Yeah.
and he would work for a couple of hours and go. And then I saw him getting paid one night, and he was getting paid for 45, £50 for the night, literally for 3 hours. And I thought, well, I don't want to be working for 750 when I could be earning, 3 times as much per hour. So I I became his assistant. And so the nights when I weren't working in the bar, I would go around with him and carry his equipment and figure out how to do it. And eventually I learned it. And then he set me up, and then I started doing my own. And then from there, I went into being a fitness instructor. And so I became a fitness instructor for a year. And then I bounced around from lots of different jobs. And I went to university for a year. And I went there to study accountancy. And my purpose of studying accountancy was to learn what the rules were for setting up business, for taxation, and how to run an efficient business. I didn't want to become an accountant. I wanted to know what all the rules were for running business.
Yeah.
And then in one of the lectures, the senior professor, he said, "Oh, I worked for 25 years for a company, and I've got this gold watch. And out there in that car park, I have a Saab 9.3. And they've also given me this little tie-pin with a ruby in it." And I stood up and I said, "Listen, if after 25 years, that's all you've got, that isn't the shit that I want." I said, "I could go out and work my bollocks off and get that within 6 months."
Yep.
And so he said, "Well, you know what, you better leave my class and don't ever come back." So I walked out of that. And funny enough, within a couple of months, I landed a job as an insurance agent. And so I went to work for this company, and I would go around and I would collect dividends off people, and I would sell them mortgages, and I would sell them financial products. And the previous guy who'd been working this was doing 60, 70 hours a week. So after 2 months of running it the way he did, and when he left me alone, I thought, well, this is highly inefficient, man. And I figured out how to do more work in 3 hours a day and be paid double, triple the rate that he was getting paid, you know? So it's crazy, Mike, you know how, but again, the thinking and the creativity wasn't me. It was what had been instilled in me and what I'd seen and gained from my father, right? And then the belief from my mum. So at all times, it's always that which is driving you. And then from there, what we did was we then set up. So then we go into my 20s, and I'm doing a few different things. I left that job as well because I thought that there was a ceiling and I wasn't going to get above it. And then I trained to be a croupier in a casino because I thought, right, I need to get on the cruise ships, travel around the world, and somehow get to the US. Because when I get to the US, that's when I can get into business, right?
Yeah.
And so the same thing happened, man. I trained for 12, 16 weeks. And then the guy who'd been training us, our licenses were delayed. And he said, "Look, you've got to keep coming in every single day until you get your licenses." And I said, "Well, essentially, you're telling us to work for nothing, right? On the promise that these licenses are going to come." I said, "Look, I don't want to be exploited like that." And he said, "Well, if you don't want your license, don't come in." So I said, "All right, well, I won't."
Right.
So I walked out on that. And then what happened was, then my uncle had a business, and my father had seen another business, which was a mini mart, like a 7-Eleven. So he said, "Look, why don't I buy this? And then you and your brothers and sisters, because I got one brother, two sisters, and we're all similar ages. There's only a year, 2 years between us." He said, "I'll get this, and you guys can run this." So, you know, he went and spoke with the owner, built up a relationship with them. He didn't have the money to buy the business properly. So what he said was, "Look, everything I've got, I will give you by the solicitors, and we will do an agreement whereby we can pay you out over the next 2 years on dividends, and I'll pay you more." So back then, again, you know, this is 1991, 92.
Yeah.
People weren't thinking like this. I'm sure they weren't. There were probably some creative guys who were, but nowadays people talk about this sort of stuff now. But back then, and I said to him, I said, "Look, Dad, you can't do that. This isn't the done thing." And he says, "Always remember this: as long as you don't break the laws, and as long as you don't do anything illegal, then everything has a way to be done. And just because they're saying to you, it's always done as ABC," he said, "you don't always have to go down that same path, right? If you can build the friendship and the relationship with people, then they will work with you. So always remember that. And these are crazy, amazing lessons.
Yeah.
But for a young 20-year-old who thinks that they know it all, and because they've been here and there, and we always think our parents don't know as much as we do because we're super smart.
Right.
But I'm
Right.
telling
Right.
you, man, my dad was my hero to me. When people had posters of footballers in their room and this and that, man, I didn't have none of that crap. To me, my dad was a working class hero. He'd come out of the slums literally and built his life up, man. So
And so
he was the guy I looked up.
what business were you in when you traveled to the Middle East in 2005? And when
So
you got
yeah, so going from that, what happened was once we got into that business, I set my brothers and sisters up, and I went into, and I defaulted into consulting. And I'll tell you just this very quickly how it happened. I had always been sociable, and I knew how to negotiate, and I knew how to get on with people. As a kid, I had grown up with adults all my life, right? Not being talked to as a kid, but being treated as an equal.
yeah.
So I was always confident in myself and my abilities. And a friend of mine who'd been away to university, he set up a law office. I went over to see him at his office, and he said, "Look, it's my first office. I've set this up. Hang around. We're going to go have lunch, but I've got to have a meeting with this investor first. And I need him to pump some money into this in order for it to work properly." So I'm looking around the office. This investor comes, and I see them take him into the room. And there's my friend and two of his partners, and they're sat on one side of the table, investors on the other side. And I thought, well, even though he's the investor, it's still unequal the way this has been done. So I went in there, and while they were still talking, I shuffled the chairs closer towards the edge so that it wouldn't be so adversarial, so confrontational. And I stuck another chair next to his. And so when they were having the meeting, I sat down next to him. So I was directed towards him. So we were like 45. And then when they asked questions, or when they were saying stuff, if I thought it wasn't said in the right way, I'd reframe it. I say, "Look, I think what Ash means is trying to say is so and so." And so the meeting went well. They come out, they shook their hands, and then the guy said to me, he said, "Oh, do you work here?" And I said, "No, I'm a friend of his." I said, "But look, and he goes, "Well, why did you come in?" I said, "Well, I didn't like the way they set it up. And even though you're the money man, I didn't want you feeling awkward." And he started laughing. He says, so he gave me his number and his card. He said, "Look, why don't you call me? I've got work for you, because if you understand people like this,
Yeah.
there's plenty of work for you, right?" And so that's where I started from, right? So that's where I started consulting from. And from there, word of mouth, man, word of mouth, right? It just snowballed. People call me, "Hey, listen, I understand you can do this. I understand you can broker a deal. I understand you can negotiate this. I understand you can help me out on this and that and the other." And it just grew and grew and grew to the point where, 10 years later, I'm in the Middle East, 2005, and I've gone out there because a group of investors has come to another legal friend of mine, a lawyer, and they've created a pot of several million, and they want to buy, because Dubai is starting to boom. They want to buy a big plot in the middle of the desert and build 70-story building or whatever it was. So we went out there, and things are going well. We're having these talks, and things are progressing. And then one evening, we're sat in a restaurant. There's myself and three friends, and we're just sat there having a meal. And these guys come in, and they kind of tug us on the shoulder, say, "Look, come outside." So the restaurant was inside of a hotel. So we go into the lobby. And as I'm stood there, the next thing, the guy's diving into my pocket, pulls my phone, pulls my keys. And I look at him like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to punch him. And my friend shakes his head. And then next thing, I'm suddenly pushed out of the door, and grabbed and pushed out of the door. I'm thrown in the back of a car. Somebody turns around and pulls a gun on me. I'm cuffed on my thumbs, and then we're driven off. My friend's thrown in next to me. We're driven off at high speed, and I'm like, "Look, what the hell's going on? Shut your mouth, be quiet." We're driven off at high speed, and then all of a sudden the car stops. The guys get out, and I'm like, heart's beating 10 to the dozen. They open the boot, and I think, shit, man, I'm about to get executed in the middle of the desert here. And they come back and they put some hoods on, and then they get back in the car and they drive off again. And then eventually it stops. It goes from a smooth road into a bumpy road. The car stops. I'm dragged into a building, dragged along, thrown in a chair. My ankles are cuffed, and I'm just sat there in the silence, wondering what the hell's going on. Then at some point, the door is kicked open. There's all this noise, and somebody punches me in the head and pulls the hood off. And then I'm surrounded by these guys, and they're screaming different languages. And then somebody says in English to me, said, "You better speak. You better speak. What's your name?" I said, "Look, I'm Alan Ghafoor." He goes, "No, what's your real name?" I said, "Look, I'm Alan Ghafoor." He said, "No, no, no. We know who you are. You're the terrorist mastermind who's just caused the London bombing and has killed all these people. You're a murderer." So we've got pictures of you in Afghanistan in the terror camps. We've got pictures of you in America setting up training camp. We've got all these documents and evidence and videos of you and what you do. He said, "My friend, you are going to die here." And I'm like, "What?" I mean, Mike.
Who are these people?
Hold on, man.
Okay.
I'll tell you this, man. I'm in this chair. I'm chained. My head is like it's in a damn vice. My throat is like somebody strangling. My heart is boom. Man, I could not believe.
But prior to that, have you seen movies like that before where like you not that exact situation, but like I've seen movies like this before, you know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah.
was that going through your head? Like, holy shit, this is.
I mean, at first, Mike, I thought that it was a bloody practical joke by someone. I thought, when I find out which idiots done this to me, before it got to the point of being accused, I thought somebody's just scaring us up, right? I'm gonna bloody kill him when I find out. But when this is going on, man, I thought this is surreal, man. The flipping rooms going in and out, yeah, like a movie, man. It was horrendous. I said, "Look, call the British consulate, say my name to them. They know who I am. They know why I'm here." I said, "You got the wrong person." And they said, "No, no, no, we know exactly who you are. We've been following you since you came here 3 weeks ago. We've got recordings of your phone calls. We've got this, we've got that. We've got evidence of who you've been meeting. And we are the secret police." Well, secret police for what, man? I mean, look, they had name badges, but the badges were always turned over, so I never could read them. But they were in Arabic, Mike, and I don't read Arabic too well, right? So I didn't have a clue. But basically, I was in this chair, I was accused of this, and I was told, "You know what, you're going to die here." And then I was interrogated and tortured around the clock. Literally, every time they changed shifts, another 2 guards would come in, the 2 would leave, and I'd be asked the same questions over and over again. And so I went from fearing for my life and fearing for the consequences for my boy, because my boy was 5 years old at the time. And I thought, how is he going to grow up with the accusation that his dad was a terrorist? Now, how's he going to cope with that? And, my brothers and sisters are going to have to change their names and change identities. How it's going to impact the whole. And so that is the thing that bothered me more than anything. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to die here, I'm going to die here. That's that. Tough. But they were telling me, "Look, man, we're going to hang you. We're going to throw you in a pit with the dogs. We're going to shoot you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And there was one particular evil guy, man. And he said to me, "Look, I'm putting you in solitary confinement for the next 25 years. And I'm going to torture you every single day with a doctor on standby. So when you faint or you go unconscious or your heart stops, he can revive you so that I can carry on." He says, "I'm going to put you in hell because you've murdered so many people."
How long after the bombing? How long after the bombings was that?
This is literally, I think it was like a week, maybe a week or 15 days, because what happened was there was a bombing, and then there was another follow-up copycat attack which was done, which failed. And it was on that when the second one happened that they grabbed us. And so they literally interrogated me and knocked me around, put me through different things, around the clock, sleep deprived. They would throw me into this little shithole that I would crawl into that was covered in shit, piss and blood. There's like an oven. They'd shut the door. It's pitch black, man, and it was horrendous. You'd have to be in there. And so this is where the self-hypnosis came in, man, because you're retching and gagging, and I had to take my mind out of there the body can stay there. And I had to switch off, man, and be elsewhere in order to survive it. Then they dragged me out of that. A couple of times when they put me under the showers, they scalded me by turning it up on hot. They put me in, when I was in the rooms, they'd either turn the AC off so it would become extremely hot, or they turn the AC on full blast so it'd be icy cold. And there was no clocks, man. I didn't know time of day. The food was, sometimes there was food, sometimes there wasn't. Food was horrible. A couple of times when I had it, they must have poisoned it, because all I did was throw up and both ends exploded horribly. And flipping, they give me clothing to wear that had these powders in, which burnt and scalded and peeled my skin from my neck down to my toes, man. Every part of my body was itching and bleeding in sores, man. There was all sorts of stuff. I was put on polygraph tests and all sorts of stuff. But the turning point, Mike, was that after the first few days, you know what, when I accepted my fate, I thought, you know what, I'm not prepared to die on my knees. And there's no way I'm going to die begging and pleading for my life. And look, Mike, I think you're a man of God, right? You believe in God, and so do I, man. To me, you know what? The only one I bow my head down is to God, right? Because He's my creator. He made me. I'm not buying it to you. You know, we shake hands, we'll be friends, but man, I'm not getting on my knees to beg you for my life. Because even if you think you've got the power to kill me, I won't die until He says the time is right to die. You know?
Yeah.
And so I thought, look, man, I ain't dying like a coward. I ain't dying like a weakling. So everything that I know about psychology and human behavior and micro expressions and body language, and, you know, everything I've learned all of my years of negotiation, I put it into play, and I thought, right, you know what? If I'm dying, I'm going to mess these guys' heads up. So I started picking at them when they came in individually to give me a cup of water or something. I'd say, oh, where's your boss? And they'd be like, which boss? I said, well, the one you normally come in with. Well, he's not my boss. He's my partner. So, well, oh, if he's your partner, why don't you ever speak when he's here? You know, it's like he's got a gag on you or something. Oh, no. You know, I said, well, he always comes in first, and you walk behind him like as if you're his wife. Oh, you know, how dare you insult me? I said, well, look, that's what I'm seeing. So I started needling at them and picking little holes apart in what was going on. And then I started going along with it. And I said, look, here's the thing. You've got me, right? And you're going to kill me. But, you know, this is what I wanted, because now I'm going to become a hero to everybody. So why don't you put me on camera before you kill me and tell everybody that you caught me? And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, put me on the camera. Somebody will see me and think, look, this poor bastard's getting stitched up. Let's get him out of there before they hang him.
Yeah.
And so I had to play, you know, I had to play the reverse psychology stuff. So
Right.
I'm going along with all of this stuff. And then one of the guys, he said, well, look, when we arrested you first, you know, you had this design on your face, you had these two stripes coming down and this goatee and all that. And he says, I realized that the two stripes means Taliban, because Taliban means two students. It doesn't. That was his interpretation. And I said, yeah, look, man, I said, you figured it out. You're like the James Bond. I said, you actually know what my secret code was. I said, so why don't you bring me a phone and let me speak to the consulate, and I'll tell you all the other stuff that's going on and all the other bombs, and you're going to save millions of lives. I said, so you're going to be a superhero. I said, they're not going to pick on you no more and think you're an idiot because your father got you this job. You know, and I could see him salivating. I'm painting the images, and then he runs off to go get the phone. But there was cameras in the room, man, and this other guy comes in, oh, you know, why are you trying to mess with my men? And, you know, you've got to say anything, you say it to me, and I'll get them on the phone. So I went through all of this stuff, man. And in the book, I detail the breakdown of the interrogation and how to get in somebody's head, right? And so it got to the point where at the end, I had to write a confession that, yeah, look, I was involved. I did this. And I wrote a ridiculous confession, Mike. I wrote down, you know, I'm friends with Saddam Hussein. I'm friends with Osama bin Laden. And I set the guys up with the bomb equipment by learning it off the internet. And the way that I raised the money was I did a sponsored bike ride. And then I said, I also organized these things called fates. And when you tell the British government that I've been organizing them across the UK, they'll know that you've got me. And he goes, what is a fate? I says, well, you told the government who I am. Tell them this man organizes fates. Now, you might not be familiar with the word fete, but a fete essentially is a church bring and buy cake sale in the summertime. And I thought, well, if this guy doesn't know what that is, when he calls up the security services in the UK or a consulate and says, oh, this guy's been holding fates and he did a sponsored bike ride to raise millions, they're going to say, are you a bloody joker?
Right.
You know? But it got serious, Mike, right at the end when they said, look, man, tomorrow morning you meet the judge and the judge will pass sentence, and then either you get killed or you go into solitary confinement. And then a couple of other little things happened. The British consulate came in and basically gave me a leaflet and said, try and find a lawyer, and that's all we can do for you. And I said, well, why don't you go back and check my history of my work? Because I've worked with some of the politicians, I worked with some of the government departments over the years. So, and they said, well, look, we can't interfere in foreign matters. But the point was that I'd done enough damage in these guys' heads for them to want to let me go and for me to get the hell out of there. So one of them came in, he says, look, we're going to let you go, but you better leave the country within the next 12 hours. And then there was a whole rigmarole, Mike, of being followed, of potentially drugs being planted at the apartment to bring us back in on another charge. There was we'd been told by somebody on the inside that we were going to get bumped off the road, shot, and then the car would be set alight and it would be staged to look like we were transporting arms and all sorts of crazy stuff, man. I mean, there's more stuff that went on, but eventually I got out of there. So when I get back to the UK, I'm paranoid about all of this stuff. There's no consequences because I've never done anything wrong, Mike. So there was nothing going on here that anybody accusing me of that. It had all been done over there. But then when we obtained under the Freedom of Information Act from the government, my name had been discussed right at the top level with the Prime Minister at the time. So they knew who I was and they knew the situation I was faced with, you know, and what the accusation was. So I suffered PTSD, Mike, because of that extreme situation.
Yeah, I bet.
So when I talk about the oscillations of emotions, for years, they were crazy because I would throw myself into work as an escape. But when I wasn't working, then those thoughts would hound me. And it wasn't the thoughts from the incident. It was other things which overtook me, like the death of my nephew, 5 years old, from leukemia, who I witnessed dying in the hospital. And then, you know, my sister stillborn, being stillborn. And then, you know, later years, my mother dying in my arms. So all of these things impacted me so severely. And when I sat back and analyzed myself, I could see that it always drew back to the extreme situation that I'd been in. And so it took me a number of years, man. It took me literally 10 years to figure out what the narrative was that I'd been telling myself and what the damage was and how to overcome it. So then, you know, I started working on myself, and basically I've become very, very stable, Mike, no matter what happens, because I've gone on to actually negotiate for other hostages in Afghanistan and in the Middle East. There was a plane that was taken in one of the African countries that I had to negotiate against warlords for. There was some other tribal chiefs I've negotiated against. So I've been negotiating all the business stuff, but then I got into the other stuff. And
well, by the way, the book's called The Innocent Terrorist, right?
Innocent Terrorist, yeah.
Innocent Terrorist. It's on Amazon. If you're listening, you want to go get it, go check it out. I go support Alam with this. By the way, did you ever find out why they thought you did it, or like was it just totally mistaken identity, or
well, there was the case that they were claiming it was mistaken identity, and which didn't really kind of ring a bell, because there's no way, because my profile doesn't fit anything that would fit anybody involved in that kind of stuff. You know, my lifestyle, my whole being, my whole living was completely different from anybody who'd be involved in stuff. So I do have something that I figured triggered it off, and I think it was that. I can't say too much about it because it implicates and it puts me back in danger. But what I can say is that because of business and something that I discovered to do with the business out there, somebody realized that their golden goose was about to be slaughtered, and
Yeah.
they figured they would finger me for it. And you know what? It takes an evil kind of person to not just make an accusation against somebody, but to make the gravest accusation that you know is going to not only cost them their life, but ruin the lives of their family, you know?
Yeah.
And
And
so
did your friend get out with you when you got out?
I got my, right, so there was 3 friends that were taken.
Okay.
And because of what happened and because of the way I handled it, when they let us out, they actually said to them, "This guy's crazy, man." You know, and one of the guys said, "He saved your lives, man. This guy's so crazy. He saved your lives. Get out of here." And
Mm.
so, 2 of my friends were they were kind of okay, but the third guy, they totally killed him, Mike. They destroyed him mentally, and he's never recovered from that. You know, he's never recovered from that. I've spoken to him twice since 2005, and he is a shell. He's a shell of a man. I mean, the others, they've had their issues, but him, man, I mean, he's the one I feel sorry for. When he came out of there, he looked like he'd aged 10 years for every year of being in, for every day of being
Wow,
in.
man. Oh,
They
wow.
just destroyed him mentally. And
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so I was going to say, so it's because of what I went through, and I figured out the path of resilience through adversity and from adversity, and it's really from that which the last year, what's happened is that I negotiate for different deals and for different things. I'm independent, and I had a CEO reach out to me for business, so we were putting something together. And then one day he broke down and he said, "Look, Al, you know, I'm really struggling. This pandemic is a horrible thing. I've got to lay people off. The business is struggling. It's causing an impact with my family." And he says, "You know what? Like, I've always been so successful and so strong, and this shit is destroying me, and I don't know what to do." And then I said to him, "Look, let me share my story with you." And I told him about it. And he's like, "Shit, man." And he said, "I would never have guessed it. You know, you're always laughing and joking. You're always positive." He said, "You never get ruffled." And I said, "Look, man, there's a reason behind it, because I figured out the key to conquering your mind." And he goes, "Well, can you share it?" So I said, "Yeah, look, we got to do a few things. We got to do some work with you." So I started doing this. And like 10 days into it, he gets me on a Zoom call and he says, "Oh, I'm patching in 3 other CEOs of different companies that I know. They want your advice. They want your help." And they're like, "Look, man, why aren't you out there telling people and helping people?" And I says, "Look, you know, I just keep myself to myself. I like the business stuff. It's not that I don't want to help people. I love helping people. But I said, you know that this thing is going to be a bit time intensive because we got to work on it daily. And I'm here for you." And I said, the thing is, when you start trying to help people, one, if they don't want to help, you can't help them, right? And secondly, if people are not dedicated, and most people only value it when they pay for it. I said, and you are CEO, so you can pay for it, right? I said, and you're listening to what I'm telling you because you're applying it. I said, so that's my thinking behind it. But from there, really, I've had a few more people reach out. I've had a couple of celebrities reach out who found out, and everything word of mouth, Mike. And I'm still doing my business stuff because I always tell them, look, first of all, I've got to get on with you. I've got to figure out, you know, that we can be friends. And your business has got to appeal to me because I like getting and looking at the business. I said, and then by all means, you know what, I'll work with you and I'll get you through it. And it's pretty cool, man, because I've got one of the good results is, you know, one of the guys, he had a setback, a real big setback over the pandemic. And now, you know, he's come back so much stronger. He's reignited his passion and his flame, and we're doing some pretty amazing stuff, man. And he's a different person, man. And his wife actually reached out and said, "I don't know what you did, you know, and how you kind of fixed him." And I said, "Look, I'm not a fixer, man. It's just, you know, I was blessed." I said, "I was blessed with being put in a shithole where I had to look at myself and face death." I said, "Because you know what? I wasn't revengeful and hateful. I was for the first few years, Mike, and that's what stopped me getting over it. And when I let that go, and when I said, you know what, if God forgives, then who am I? I've got to forgive, man. I've got to forgive, because you know what? Hate doesn't build you, right? Hate will only burn you, and revenge will only eat away at you. When you let that stuff go, and when you start accepting what is happening without filters, then you know what? Nothing will faze you, because it's just normal. It's going to happen. It was going to happen. It's due to happen. It's fine, right? Then you don't even have to future project and worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen, because you know what? Just taking steps, right? Stop worrying, because tomorrow, listen, man, I tell people this. I say, listen, I'm not being morbid. You're one breath away from death, right? You could just keel over like that. You could step out and the bus could hit you. Anything could happen. So always think you're one breath away. But you know what? If you woke up in the morning, you better say thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Thank you for whatever you believe in, because you opened your eyes, you took a breath. I said that when you climb in that bed on a night, you better say thank you for the day I've had, for the food I've eaten, for the water I've drunk. It rained. Hallelujah, it rained. There was sunshine, there was snow, whatever it was. Be grateful, because somebody in the world somewhere cannot experience that, right? I said, when you start thanking God, the universe, for every little thing, I said, that's when it bloody rains abundance. And when you become the, what do they call it? The in the eye of the storm, you become the calm, right? Then none of it's going to faze you, Mike. And so essentially that's where I am, man. And so as bad as that experience was, you know what? I'm grateful for it, man, because it taught me a frigging lesson. And you know what? So now I live every moment and every day with joy and love and kindness, you know, and I try and help people, and I do the business stuff. And I'm grateful for you, Mike, man. I'm grateful for your friendship.
Me too, man. I'm glad we had the opportunity to meet and through the tech world and all that. Are you prepared at all to talk about that at all now, or no? Is that still out?
Yeah. No. So
tell us what you're doing with that.
Yeah, exciting stuff happening, Mike. So again, you know, like I say, we are the sum total of our experiences to date. So, like I said, and I mentioned it in the talk, when people come and they ask you for advice, you're an expert in your area, Mike, and I'm an expert in my field. And people come in and say, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I run something by you? And you actually tell them valuable information. But these people, they don't take it on board, because you know what? They don't value it, because they didn't put a price on it. And they think, oh, you know, he's just telling me this. Sometimes they'll go and half-heartedly try it. Sometimes they won't. But they'll just pick your brain for the sake of it. And I thought, well, hang on, I'm getting sick and tired of this, because if you come to me and you ask me for an answer to your solution, an answer to your problem, right? I can give you that answer quickly and succinctly in a matter of minutes, not because I'm a frigging genius, but because over 30 years of experience and time and money, I've learned how to cope with that situation and what the answer is. So I can give you a direct thing. You know, it's like there used to be that quote everybody used to use, where the guy went on the ocean liner and all the engines stopped, and he walked around, and they had all these experts. Anyway, this guy came on, he walked around it, and eventually he gets to a nut, and he just loosens it and taps the pipe, and the whole thing starts up. And then he bills them $10,000. And they're like, yeah, but it only took you 5 minutes. And well, no, because 30 years I've been working on the boats, and I know exactly what to do. So it's the same thing. So because of that, I thought, right, you know what? The pandemic has uprooted people's lives. People's work has changed. People have lost jobs. And people are experts in different niches, different industries. So if somebody wants to pick their brain and get advice from them, they should pay them for that. There should be a value on that. So we've created this platform, which is going to launch in a couple of weeks, called Ask Expert Now. And so anybody, anywhere in the world, can put a question up on this platform, and they'll put a price on it. They'll say, I need to know X, and I'm willing to pay $100, $200, $500 for it. And then the experts on the platform that are relevant, the system will ping the person back and say, these 5 are the experts who could answer this. They will then look through their bios and say, yeah, I want Mike to answer it. And then the system will tell you, hey, Mike, there's this money going in the account. can you answer this question? But the beauty of the system is that everybody and anybody can put a profile up there for nothing. You put your bio in, and you also put your hourly rate, your half hour, and your 15-minute consult. Now, anybody anywhere in the world can find Mike and say, you know what, I need an hour of Mike's time. They pay you for your hour, Mike. Through the app, you do an audio call, you can upload and download files, you can do a video one-to-one with them, consult. And so that's the beauty of the platform.
Yeah.
If you're a company that's giving out proposals, you know what? You work hard, you've got experience in order to write that proposal. Don't give it away for free no more. Put it on the platform and tell the company, you know what, upload the proposal from there, pay the fee, and when you take me on for the job, I'll deduct it from the final
Right.
fee, you know, because it's going to take me hours to prepare a proposal. So all it is that I want people to put value on their time, because no matter what they do, whether you're a babysitter or you're a nutritionist or you're a chef or you're the mortgage advisor or you're real estate and commercial or you're a marine fisherman, somebody somewhere wants to pick your brain. Somebody somewhere wants to know what you know, and they will pay you for that, because that's the only way they're going to value what you give them. And if they don't act on it, well, then more fool them. So this is the whole premise behind this, you know, and it's going to be
Yeah, I love it. Like how far out are you from now?
a couple of weeks, apparently, according to the tech people.
Okay. Yeah. So give or take within a month or so, we should be seeing this out there. So yeah, that's awesome. By the time this podcast is out, it should be good to go. So as we wind down here, what's the best way for my audience to contact you or reach you or engage with you?
You can reach me at alangafoor.com. You can get me on LinkedIn. You can get me on Instagram, and you will find me as the negotiation expert on Clubhouse. I run a room there on a Friday night all about negotiations and communication. So yeah, I'm available, man. You'll find me. Just Google my name and you'll see the story. You'll see everything.
I'll be popping in that Clubhouse room. I'm intrigued by that. I want to hear some tips on that, because I think I'm pretty good when it comes to that, but I'd love to hear some from the expert. So, hey, Alam, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate you sharing with me and my audience. If there's anything I could ever do for you, obviously we're going to be working together here very, very soon. And I just appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your audience. Definitely reach out to me, everybody. I'm here for you.
You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. And you know what? Alam, obviously, he falls in, after hearing his story, he falls into the unstoppable category. Go support our guests, guys. Go check out Alam's book, The Innocent Terrorist, on Amazon. And until next time, be unstoppable.